All Things Data podcast. In the spirit of Daniel Kahneman, Peter Diamandis, and Google Moonshots, brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss how to utilize, harness, and deploy data science and data-driven strategies to enable digital transformation. The hosts are Dr. Manjeet Rege, Associate Professor of Data Science, and Dan Yarmoluk, Director of Business Development of IoT and Data Science.
You're listening to the All Things Data podcast. My name is Manjeet Rege, and we have an interesting conversation lined up today, which would be at the intersection of IoT, AI, analytics. I'll let Dan Yarmoluk, my co-host, introduce our guest today. Hi, Dan.
How you doing, Manjeet? We got a great couple of guests from the company ATOS, which is a European IT services corporation headquartered in France that does a lot of industrial networking, unified communications, cloud, big data, and cybersecurity services. A lot of people in the United States are unaware of how big this multi-billion-dollar company is, but it's entrenched in many large enterprise type of accounts. And we have two great guests, professionals from ATOS. It's Andrew Stevenson and Julien Bensaid. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi. Let me start off asking you a little bit about ATOS. So for those of us, at least in the US, who might not be completely familiar with what ATOS does, could you give us a background about ATOS?
Julien, would you like to do that part?
Yes, of course. So ATOS is a Paris-based company with revenue of 13 billion euros and about 100,000 people worldwide in 73 countries. So we have a global footprint. And we're an IT services company, as was mentioned before, spanning consultancy, system integration, digital transformation, managed services, infrastructure, and also high-tech e-transactions. And we also build our own high-performance servers and supercomputers. So it's a very broad range of services worldwide. And we're very happy today to talk a little bit about sort of analytics and get involved in the conversation.
So let me start off with a question on analytics. Sometimes one sees a lack of domain expertise from many of the freshly minted, you can say, data scientists who might be, perhaps be great at providing a model, but at the end of the day, for any company, it is important about how do I use that model for increasing the business value, right? So what's your thoughts on that?
That's a great point, and it's something that really bugs me, actually. But it's not just some of the fresh-faced ones. It can be some of the really detailed and sort of older data scientists and analytics, statistics gurus that are really focused on the model and providing an answer, but can't really communicate the why that answer is important and how it can improve the business. Right. In my eyes, there's a distinct lack of an ability to tell a story. And actually, Manjeet, that's part of my job title. So my job title now for ATOS is Chief Storyteller.
Wow, that's really interesting.
A great title. I've got several, but Chief Storyteller is the one I like, as well as Global Evangelist. It's better, my wife says, than the former one, which is Director of Big Data and Analytics, which if you shorten it becomes Dobdar, which he thinks is something from the Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. But Chief Storyteller is the one. And, I get a lot of data scientists and data engineers who are really keen and provide this answer and do all the analysis. And then, the answer is 42. Now, what's the question? And they really can't see what the impact of giving that answer is, or even looking and putting some common sense on it to say, does that answer actually make sense? Have I actually got the data in the right form, and am I doing the right analysis to come up with an answer that, I use the term eyeballing it, makes sense? Right.
So let me kind of follow up on that. Right now, there is a huge shortage of people with expertise in AI or analytics. And at the same time, you would like to hire somebody, as you just mentioned, who would like to develop a statistical model or a machine learning model that adds business value, right? So you have, typically when I look at companies, there are two options. One is you have people who have worked with you for a long time, who have the domain expertise, but might not have the machine learning knowledge. So one path forward is perhaps to train those people. The other is get somebody from outside who might be an expert in AI domain, but not perhaps have a knowledge about your business. Which of the two do you think is a much better approach?
For us, it's actually do both. So I think it's in all our duties to help teach models and algorithms how to be better for the future, and not vice versa, not to be taught by the model or the algorithm and let it run away. So for me, it's about everyone who does a consulting or process engineering to become familiar with the art of modeling, not to be deep into how to create algorithms and models. That's where the really good statisticians and data scientists and modelers come in, but to have a joined up team that works together so that they can actually put together a model that makes sense. And what we've done in ATOS is actually run an internal program, getting some of our senior data scientists to actually run training courses for engineers, for technical architects, solution engineers, and our business domain experts to give them a basic grounding in what models do and how to use machine learning going forwards. So I think that is a really important way of doing it. It's very difficult to get people who can see both sides. One of my old bosses said that she could see data engineers because they saw things typically in black and white, whereas some consultants saw shades of grey in the middle. And it's difficult to get people that can do both. I think I'm lucky coming from an engineering background. Electronics engineer is where I started, but then moved into technology-enabled marketing and database marketing and saw both sides. So I've got that ability to actually bring the two together.
Do you see the role of chief data officer being transformed into a chief storyteller kind of a role? Because chief data officer to me sounds a little bit more siloed, that we are looking more at the data, but not with the right context. Whereas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a chief storyteller would look at the data, would look at the insight, and then talk about how do I convey the data story, right?
Absolutely. And it's something I see in a great deal of clients and organizations that we talk to, is the current break between the creation of insight and then the use of that insight to create business value. So closing the loop. Too many businesses are focused on that. Well, let's take all the data and analyze it. We've got 50 data scientists. We must be able to come up with some insight, but they don't actually start from what types of problems are we trying to solve? What are the types of issues and what types of things could we be doing differently if we had that insight? And that is that whole aspect of storytelling in terms of, I break it down simply as an engineer into what are my if only moments. So if only I knew that, if only I had access to that, if only I could, and asking clients what their if only moments are, and then getting them to describe, what would you do differently if you had that? Because that's all about that idea of closing the loop. And if you're not going to do anything different from having the insight, there's no point in going to the expense of actually creating the insight in the first place.
Julien, can you tell me, like, having heard this from Andrew and the way the market stands today, when I'm looking at the market, we're obviously talking like technology looking, we got solutions looking for problems. Dovetailing on what Andrew said, we're seeing that it's a nuance of subject matter expertise, leveraging data science. Also, like, how do people consume the technology that we're throwing down, right? I mean, my big shtick with Manjeet always is like assuming that a mining manager can consume 5 streaming dashboards is really not reality today. They don't read paper reports, nonetheless, giving them a bunch of data science. So as a market leader embedded in all these things globally, What's your go-to-market strategy, or what is your philosophical belief to solve the problems and add value?
The end-to-end view is what we believe in, starting off with a consultancy approach, starting off with the what ifs, and getting to the use cases, taking that to something that delivers value, then building it out to scale. So that's one part of what we believe in and our go-to-market. The other part is very definitely a vertical view, so looking with a great amount of subject matter expertise, combining that with the data science and whatever technologies are relevant. So making sure that you really understand the business, and getting back to those what ifs that Andrew was talking about, understanding what they mean by their what ifs. What does predictive maintenance mean in different industries? I mean, the concept is the same essentially, but in different industries, it can make a difference of sort of 20% or 50% of the cost base, and in others, it can turn the actual way you do business around. So you go to market in a fundamentally different way, and you can offer services as an outcome at a fraction of the cost. So what does it actually mean to your business? Understanding that is a very important part of the go-to-market.
Are you seeing outcome-based business models taking root right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of companies talk about it. It's, if you think about the term outcome-based, I think we probably heard it in the industry for the past 15 years or more, haven't we?
Yep.
And I know that whenever we speak to analysts, for example, they're saying, are you doing outcome-based yet? And we sort of say, well, we've got models and we talk about it and we can, but, when it gets to contracting, a lot of our customers or potential customers feel they're not ready for it yet, or the real business value hasn't been articulated to such an extent that they're willing to change the entire engagement model. So those models are out there. It's possible, but we don't see it happening very much. Having said that, we do start to see, probably in the last 18 months or so, more of an uptake, not so much in us contracting with our customers in an outcome-based situation. We've got a few examples of that, but more in terms of talking from a business perspective, how the business that we're helping, so our customer's customer, essentially, turns their services from a fixed price or as a service into an outcome-based service. So we sort of leapfrogged servicing our customers with outcome-based to our customers delivering outcome-based, if you like. An example of that would be a pharmaceutical firm that we're working for, and they deal with pest control. And, essentially what they have been doing in the past has been selling pesticides and rodent control substances. And what they're now doing, because traps for pests have been connected through IoT with analytics on top, enabling them to do predictive maintenance of the traps. Instead of checking 300 each round in a warehouse, they now only have to check 10 because they know exactly which ones have been tricked. So what they are now doing is they are offering a pest-free warehouse as an outcome, as opposed to selling X number of kilos of pesticides.
Yeah, it's just a different engagement. A lot of these OEMs that have been creating product haven't been service-centric, and I do believe this competency around services-based as opposed to product-based and outcome-based is still, there's an evolution in market maturity for these traditional OEMs to go there, but the profitability is huge, and if we can get it right, some people are going to make a lot of value for the customers ultimately.
Absolutely, Dan. They're also going to protect their business. One of the issues is that if they're just selling product, then anyone can come along and put a wrapper of services around their products. But if they're actually selling the outcome, it's much more difficult for someone to come in and disrupt their market. So they are actually acting as a disruptor to the market.
My organization is IoT aftermarket stuff, and we all things considered, we're partnering potentially with ATOS to provide this aftermarket vibration monitor on to the brownfield equipment for vibration on rotating equipment. Now, we try to sell that directly to the plant. They're already so lean, they don't have the time, and I'm just going to give them a bunch of data that says they got more problems. Ultimately, if, the way we look at it is if ATOS can triage that to people who can maintain it, not only are we alerting them, but we're also fixing the problem, because we want behavioral change with IoT. We don't want more analytics. At the same time, I would like if I could have independent guys, monitoring these things. And I envision a world saying, if I save you 5 million, can I keep 2.5?
We've tried some of those, but actually when you get to the contracting stage, as Julien was saying, the CFO tends to turn around and go, I think I'd like more of that 2.5 to keep myself. And that's the issue. It's too many stakeholders involved.
This is what I felt was the issue with outcome-based. It's really contracting and how to metric that so that we can roll it out. But someone's going to figure it out real quick, right? And it's going to be exciting.
It is an exciting area. It's an exciting time of being in industry and in this area and seeing the changes that are coming along. But I still go back to one of my original points around the sort of common sense that needs to be applied as well. Because, working with some clients who are looking and trying hard to do predictive maintenance and predict a breakdown on the machine. And when you ask them how often their machine breaks down, they're going, well, it breaks down once every 2 years. What's the actual impact of that breakdown, and how much is it going to cost you if that machine breaks down? And how much is it going to cost you to predict it's going to break down? Is there actually a valid return on investment? You shouldn't be doing things just because you can. There's got to be a real need to do it. This is something that I think is one of these breakdowns between business and IT as well. And there's too many companies coming along and driving wedges between business and IT groups, focusing on the business groups and saying, you don't need IT, we'll give you the tools and you can just do all of your playing around and proof of concepts and give me all your budget and we'll give you insight. But then when the business teams get that insight, they can't industrialize it because the IT teams are doing something else, or companies giving the latest software packages and technology infrastructure to IT teams, but having no business benefit as part of the justification. So there's no way round actually having both business and IT working together. And it comes back to that whole thing we were saying earlier about the role of the chief data officer and the chief storyteller has got to be about bringing this all together and enabling businesses to move forward faster, keeping the lights on in the critical IT, and also providing solutions to enable the rapid development of new solutions as well.
All those points you were saying is, I think that's, maybe you can comment. Do you think that's the reason that there hasn't been a lot of market uptake? There's a lot of POCs and there's so many vendors out there talking about this endless possibilities. At the same time, I think the market is reacting saying, I don't see the business benefit with all this intelligence just yet. And the way you're framing it, I think is the reason why the market is reacting that way.
Well, it's one of the reasons, as Julien was saying, that we approach this as an end-to-end. So we have our business consulting teams working with the business users, but we also have our technology teams working with IT in parallel to enable them to deliver the solutions and industrialize the solutions, depending on what the IT infrastructure is like. So there's no point in going into an SAP house and trying to sell them an Oracle platform or an open source platform when they've got an SAP investment that they can build on. So for us, it's really about looking at that big picture and helping them drive it forward. And I think it is one of the key reasons why we're not seeing the real benefits come out in many instances. The other area is that a lot of companies are very unhappy about talking about the benefits they're getting because it really is a competitive advantage when they get it right. So we're doing a lot of work with companies, and when we ask them to be references or things, they really are unhappy about it. And so we have to start talking in very anonymized ways around what we're doing. But when we do get it right with those clients that really understand that there's a business need and an IT need, and they have the processes, the culture, and the organizational change in place to accept that, there are huge benefits to actually doing it. Just as an example of that, we worked with a manufacturer in Europe of hygiene products. And they were having problems with a machine that kept jamming. and it was a new production line that was randomly jamming, said the production manager, and he couldn't understand why it was jamming. Well, we thought, with a production machine, there's no such thing as random. If we measure, if we look at the data, we can predict it. And within a couple of weeks, by looking at the data, we could predict 5 minutes before it was going to jam that it was. He thought that was almost black magic, that we could do that. And he said it's brilliant because all I have to do is blow some air across the production line and blow out the offending article and keep my production line going. And we said, well, actually, if you look at the data that you've got, that we've got from your machine, a large percentage of the products that you're actually producing are under tolerant. They're under thick, but that's not giving you a problem on your machine. It's only the over thick products that are jamming it. So you're actually making a large percentage of products that are inferior. And his response to that was, that's not my KPI. I'm not interested in it. It's that sort of culture and organizational change that needs to be put in place to actually make some of these changes and transformations actually work.
I know that I think was it probably 2 years ago that ATOS launched Codex. And since we've been talking about some of the challenges and solutions for analytics, can you talk a little bit about how Codex has worked out for you? And first of all, what is Codex?
Yes, so I'll give a little bit of background as to how we got here, and then perhaps Julien can pick up, because Julien's our head of Codex across all of our divisions. But about 4 years ago, ATOS and Siemens were looking at how we could move forward together in advanced analytics. So ATOS and Siemens work closely together. We have a joint R&D fund that each company puts money into. And both companies saw big data, as it was termed at the time, as one of the aspects to move into, particularly around industrial data analytics. So I was actually given the project of coming together with all of the ATOS market areas across all of the different markets we work in, all of the Siemens divisions, and the corporate IT, corporate strategy of both companies, and putting together a development program that developed some assets and technologies, methodologies that could be used by both companies to actually speed up the development and creation of value from advanced analytics. So we ran a joint program that I managed that created the assets, which were methodologies, which were people being trained, and some product. And that became the kernel of what Codex has now become, which is our overall brand for everything we do in IoT and analytics and digital transformation. So that's how ATOS Codex has come into being. It's not an individual product, ATOS Codex. No. It is our brand, but we do have a wealth of accelerated learning points, products that we can use, kit bag tools that we can use to actually drive forward clients' engagements in a much speedier way. Julien, do you want to pick up on Codex now and what it means?
Sure, just a couple of words. So first of all, it's our brand, right? It's a brand for data value creation solutions and products. And that encompasses IoT, advanced analytics, cognitive, and AI. And given that by implication, and machine learning, obviously, NLP and all of that good stuff. So it's anchored, Codex is anchored in our digital transformation strategy by assets such as Andrew was talking about, and that includes software, hardware, engineering, and service practices, set of integrated tools and apps, industry-specific solutions. And that's all geared towards being able to work with our customers to generate use cases and to industrialize them, which is basically addressing the two major needs that we come across. So whenever we're connecting and collecting, storing and analyze data, we're deriving business insights, providing predictions, and triggering actions. That's what ATOS Codex is. So, it's moved way past its origins of just being a data platform, which is what it started out as being, which is a great start. And that's become part of what it is today.